Good way to do it. We have one guy coming over for board games tonight, which is why I had to start a little early. It's not going to be an issue.
All right, are we ready to go, Kevin?
We're live.
Oh, okay, we're live.
It's on there. 18 seconds.
I just wait for Sean to do his thing, and then we go.
Well,
we have
silence while everyone waits for Sean to tweet out the.
That's true, actually.
There you go.
We start with unscripted banter.
Well, unscripted banter just happens on the podcast too, so
that is true.
Yeah, I'm opening the beer now. Or
there you go.
Yeah, you're behind.
No,
you're way behind. I'm like 3 blue vines down. We did a good bike ride today through Amsterdam, so it was good.
That's awesome.
It was actually not such a great day to do it. It was cold. The last couple of days have been really sunny. It's been really nice here. But a couple extra drinks and you're okay. You're okay with the length.
Oh man, that's a life. Just drinking.
Yeah, but exactly. True. Like there's nothing else to do right now. You bike around, right? There's nothing open in Amsterdam these days because of lockdown. Just like you guys, I think. You guys are going back into lockdown. Oh no, the UK is going into lockdown this week.
No, well, like Kevin's in BC, but I think they have roughly the same. I don't know. Actually, I don't know what the rules are in BC.
The malls are open. Everything is pretty much open. There's no real lockdown per se here.
We're just not allowed to be going over to anybody's house.
Yeah, basically, you can go to church. You can gamble. Well, we can't gamble here.
Casino, you can go to the mall.
Yeah, but don't go see a friend.
Go to the ODR. Just don't go over to someone's house.
We have like outdoor sports and that's it. So like soccer fields are open, for instance, but nothing else.
Yeah, we actually don't even have that.
What are you? You got too many.
We have athletics up to 18, and they've been talking about expanding that. I also coach here. I coach the student hockey team here. They've been talking about expanding our league up, but both of our goalies are over 35, so we don't have any good ways to play as a younger team. And yeah, there's a single ice rink here in Amsterdam, so we're basically fighting with the ice rink about getting our goalies to play if they want us to. It's a weird thing. Don't worry about that.
Awesome.
Yeah, right. It's a struggle. It's a surprising struggle.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So we're tweeted out.
Yeah.
All right. So Kevin, do your thing.
Are live.
I love it.
Well, hello all. Happy December 19th to you. Welcome to Hockey Podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at podcast_hockey. Follow us on Facebook as well. Like us on Facebook, the Hockey Podcast. And as well as subscribe to wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Google, Spotify, etc., etc., etc. And we've got lots to get into today. We've got Sean. Hello, Sean.
Hello, Kevin. How are you today?
I'm all right. How are you today?
Oh, I'm pretty good. As anyone who's followed me on Twitter has noticed, I've been watching all the America's Cup World Series, and I've been tweeting about it. So I've confused a lot of people.
I heard it was a good race.
The last one was.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Do we need to start a sailing podcast, or do you want to have a daily version on this, like where you just update us on the sailing?
It's actually going to be like our wrestling podcast, there, Kevin. We'll just have a combined sailing and wrestling podcast.
Oh, that'd be so fun.
Yeah, right.
Just run-ins. In the words of Eminem, guess who's back? Back again.
Is it me?
Guess who's back? Guess who's back? That's
Oh
Heidi.
gosh. Yes, hello. I am back. I needed to take a break and just let you guys talk, as we all know my lovely partner here talks so much that I just have nothing to say about hockey anymore. That I thought I'd give him the full time to chat about hockey. But it's World Juniors time, and I'm excited for that. And I'm almost at the point of being on break from work for 2 weeks. So
yay!
A couple more work days on Monday and Tuesday. So yeah, but it's glad to be back. And yes, as we've been watching sailing in the house, and I've been learning about sailing, and it's been really exciting. I actually think it's a pretty cool sport to watch.
Yes, fair enough. And we'll have a couple of guests today. Later on, Derek Neumeier is going to join us. But we've never had a guest. I've never interviewed anyone from Amsterdam before. This is the furthest I've had a podcast from. So
you're living there.
Yeah, I live here. You
live here.
I'm from Calgary.
You're from Calgary. It's Tom Escher, famous on Reddit. Tell us a bit about you. Tell us about life in Amsterdam. What are we missing out on?
I am a master's student here. Exams were Monday was my exam, so I've just crawled out of that hole. Amsterdam is better when you're not in lockdown. I mentioned this a little bit earlier. I will say that. But yeah, before this, I was making beer in Calgary. I decided to apply for a degree, and I got accepted. So.
Oh, awesome! So, in what degree?
I study physics.
Oh, nice. Nice. Okay.
Thank you very much. I'm studying crystallization physics. I appreciate that.
If you get him talking about the stuff that he studies, it's quite technical.
Yeah. It was a surprising degree. I didn't know I would do it until I got here. I'm good. I'm happy with it. Amsterdam's a great place. I've also become, like I said earlier, a hockey coach here, which was a surprising thing. But it's been really fulfilling. So I would recommend coaching if you're good at it. If you can do the hockey, then it's working.
Hey, there we go.
Yeah, the coaching has been really good here.
Awesome. We also talk about what we're drinking. I'm dry, but what are you drinking?
This is a Grolsch Hurstbach. It's actually like you can buy Grolsch in Canada, right? You can't buy the specific one, but it's the same brewery. I was hoping to get some particularly Amsterdam beers tonight, but unfortunately I didn't have the time today. So it's boring stuff.
It's all good. Sean and Heidi, what are you drinking? It is legal to drink at 11:12 during lockdown, right?
It really is.
It's December. You can put Bailey's in your coffee at 7 a.m. It's fine.
True.
I did that this morning.
Yeah. I'm drinking from Common Crown, the Brighter Days Citra Pale Ale. It's a Citra Pale Ale, so nice and refreshing, easy drinking, crushable beer. According to the its label, best enjoyed with virtual meetups, online workouts, binge watching, and sunny days on the deck.
There you go.
If that's not a 2020 beer label, I don't know what is.
And Heidi, what are you drinking?
So I am drinking the Pile o' Bones Brewing out of Regina, and it is a cold brew Americano stout. So I'm getting my coffee and my beer in at the same time this morning. It's really good. Sean put an order in with Alberta Beer Exchange yesterday, so we got a bunch of different stuff sent to us yesterday. So we love giving shout outs to local businesses here on the Hockey Podcast. So yeah, Alberta Beer Exchange for all your delivering craft beer needs. And
for those who have a pile of the plastic 4-pack and 6-pack holders, those the hard plastic ones, they don't recycle them here in Calgary, but the Alberta Beer Exchange will take them all back and reuse them. So
they took a giant pile of ours because we have been collecting ours since the beginning of the year.
I totally empathize. Empathize.
But yeah, we'll give a shout out to them as well as to the part-time employer of one of our part-time hosts, Chris. He is a delivery. He's delivering for Wise Guys Liquor as well. So both Alberta Beer Exchange and Wise Guys are doing deliveries to your house for your booze needs.
Yeah.
Yay.
Well done.
Awesome. Well, let's get into this. Maybe we'll start with Heidi with kind of where you're at. You haven't had a chance to speak hockey in a while, so kind of where are you at? How are you feeling about the World Juniors? Where do you want to take us first?
Oh man, okay. As much as I've been trying to keep up with everything, it's hard. I've been busy with work and all that stuff, but I'm excited about World Juniors. It's and I've said this to multiple people, the World Juniors feels like the only thing that seems like it's kind of normal this year, as long as it still happens, because who knows, something could happen in the next couple of weeks, knock on wood. But it feels like one of the kind of things that is still consistent about the holiday season here, that it's something that'll be on. We'll have it to watch on. There'll be a Canada game on Boxing Day, and so that'll be great. I know my brother is super bummed out because he had tickets to go to a bunch of games up in Edmonton.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, so he's super bummed out that he isn't able to do this year. I think they're gonna somehow. I think they just got their refunds too, from what I had just heard. But yeah, so hopefully he gets to experience that at some point. Because when we talked to him about it, I think back in September, he was pretty bummed about it. But as I said, at least there'll be something consistent. I'm excited to watch. We got a couple Flames prospects on Team Canada. We got one on Russia. So yeah, I'm excited to see Pelche this year because we didn't get to see him last year. Yeah, just looking forward to just chilling out on my break and watching a lot of hockey, because apparently they're going to broadcast every single game, including the preseason,
which is great. So Tom, kind of tell us sort of from your perspective, let's get into some of what the European content, the European prospects for the Flames specifically. What can we expect? What are we hoping? Who are some of the names to look out for?
So your guy for the Flames is Yan Kuznetsov, right? Yan Kuznetsov, Russia's interesting this year because Russia's entire defense graduated last year. And last year it was pretty obvious who's going to be the first pair. Alexander Romanov might be in the NHL this year, right? He was their top defenseman on Russia last year. He took them to the silver medal. I don't think Yan Kuznetsov will be the first pairing guy in Russia, excuse me. I think it's partially because of where they were picked, but also just because the player with the most points in the KHL this year is Shakir Mukhamadullin. Mukhamadullin. I got that.
You did that much better than I could. I'm telling you now.
Thank you. So Shakir, easier I think, is the highest scoring KHL player on this roster for Russia. That's higher than Vasily Podkolzin. That's higher than all of the other big forwards on this team. Igor Chainikov, our famous Columbus Blue Jackets pick. So I think he's your inside track for the first defenseman, and he's the same guy as Yan Kuznetsov. He's huge. I think that they're likely to split them up. Every defenseman on Russia this year is left-handed. Russia has a single right-handed forward, and that's it. Which I don't even know how you end up with that on a roster.
That's fascinating, actually.
That is actually quite fascinating. That's that is going to be very interesting. I wonder why that is. Sean,
no one right-handed in Russia.
Well, I'm okay with it as a left-handed shot, but and I do play the right side.
Right.
I mean, I know other people
Someone
are not.
will.
Yeah.
Someone has to, right?
Call me TJ Brody. Anyway.
Yeah, that will be very interesting to watch us to see if the other teams can exploit that. If we go back to the NHL playoffs, it was the Vegas Golden Knights only had one right shot defenseman playing in their top six, and the Dallas Stars were able to exploit that in the conference finals. So
yeah.
The smart coaches will be able to exploit that, and it'll be up to the coaches and the players on Russia to figure out how they can avoid that and not make that as big an issue as it could potentially be.
And the saving grace for Russia, I think, is Askarov, right?
Yeah.
When you've got we've talked about this a few times on our podcast in terms of the goaltending situation that this tournament is going to expose for all the countries. Canada hasn't had their goalies play really at all. The States of Spencer Knight's played a few games in college, and then you've got the European goalies that have been able to play. So it's going to be. I'm really going to be watching that closely to see whether or not the Canadian goaltenders in particular can get up to the level that they're going to be needed to play at, especially come the medal round.
Yeah.
Definitely for
Go ahead, Tom.
No, I was definitely for Canada. I think that's the biggest question is their goalies. Like Group B, Russia has Askarov, like I said. The U.S. has Spencer Knight and also Dustin Wolf. Not that he'll play very much, I don't think. The Swedish goalie who's returning is Hugo Almefelt, and he was the best goaltender last year, other than Canada's goalie. So, as an 18-year-old, so Group B is going to be ridiculous for goaltenders. And then Finland's goaltender was the second goalie drafted this year, Joel Blomqvist, I think his name is. I know his name is. He's a Pittsburgh Penguins prospect. So goaltending's huge, especially because it's the one thing that, right, TSN is going to hammer this all year, or all tournament, is that Canada's goaltenders are question mark, I think. Because that's like their only hole, really. It's a wild team.
Where my thought has been that, sort of, I think the three favorites we were thinking were, we didn't have, Sean and I don't, I mean, we were speaking before, maybe Sean has changed his mind, but I don't have Canada as a favorite. I'm kind of leaning that this is a Sweden, Finland, US sort of tournament. What are you feeling about this, Tom? Are you feeling that that Canada is a favorite, or who's kind of the teams to watch out for in your mind?
I don't know. I don't think I would call Canada a favorite. I think Canada can expect the podium. I think Canada would be disappointed if they didn't get a medal this year. But I don't like Canada's goaltending can lose them a game. It might lose them a couple games, right? And if they lose the wrong one, they're out. So I wouldn't call Canada a favorite. I think that this is a tournament where goaltending matters a lot. Any short tournament is like that, right? And like Askarov and Spencer Knight are probably the two best goaltenders outside of the NHL. Maybe. That'll be a big storyline, I think, this year. Especially because Askarov wasn't great last year, right? He played here and he lost his job, right? Yeah. So I would say that my favorite is probably the U.S. I like especially Jake Sanderson. I like their defense better than Russia's. Otherwise, those teams are very similar to me. In terms of like both of them have dangerous top six. I think you could choose a lot of players on both of those rosters who would lead this tournament in points. right? Like Trevor Zegras or Vasily Podkolzin or Igor Chynakov could lead this team in goals, right? I think both those teams are really scary. Is Sweden as good as Russia or the US, you think?
My thing with Sweden is they've gone through so much with all their different COVID cases and everything. I think they're if they were at full strength, I think that you could put them up there. They've got Lucas Raymond. They've got they still have the top end players.
Yeah,
Alexander Holtz. Yeah,
one of the guys they lost to COVID was the center of that line last year.
Yeah,
Lucas Raymond, Carl Henriksen, and Alexander Holtz, and they lost that center. And he would have been their top line center for sure. So, and they lost probably 2 top 4 defensemen. They lost big guys to COVID this year, I think.
Yeah, so it's gonna be tough for them to recover from that. I think I saw that it was basically the team doctor was running the practice with like half the team yesterday. So I think that just unfortunately takes the shine off of what could be a very strong Swedish team. Well, they're always very strong. It's been forever since they've lost a game in the round robin.
2007.
I wrote it down somewhere. Yeah, you're right. Something like that. It's like 50 games. It's just a wild number.
It's insane. So I think they're to me, I think the three teams that I think are a step ahead of everyone are the US, Russia, and Canada, and they all have question marks. They all have issues where you can see that why you can not pick them. Sweden is half step behind. Germany could really. I mean, Germany just had 8 positive COVID tests. So you don't know what position they're going to be in come the start of the tournament. Otherwise, I would say they were a team that could surprise. And Finland's always an underrated strong team. So, and when they've got Blomqvist was one of the top rated goaltenders in the draft. It's just with goaltenders you never know, so they always get bumped down to the 2nd or 3rd rounds for the most part. So it's going to be they could surprise. I wouldn't be I wouldn't be shocked at all if we see them like upset those top 3 and come in and gold and be gold medalists. So.
And I think this is an underrated storyline of Group B, which is that you have Russia and the US, and Sweden, right? One of those teams is going to finish 3rd. The team that finishes 3rd probably plays Finland, right? The 2 teams that finish 1st play the best of Slovakia and Switzerland and Germany. I would much rather play one of those 2 teams, right? So those games I think are a big deal. In terms of USA Russia is one of the first games of the tournament. It's the 3rd game they play, and it might be one of the most important ones of Group B.
That'll set up what is happening with this tournament pretty much, right? That is it. Like it'll. What I think is fascinating about this tournament too is it's almost a preview of what not to jump to the NHL here, but this is the preview. This is the Canadian division. It's wide open and anyone can actually win this. So. It depending on the circumstances that happen here for sure. So I think that's what's going to make this really like exciting in a lot of ways is that aspect of like every game is going to be really important. This is not going to be a tournament even from Canada's perspective where they've got some easier games that don't look but they still are going to have to. They're going to have to do very well in them because this is about seeding and goals for and goals against and that.
And the comment about like Canada just got out of quarantine, right? As a team because they had a bunch of players that had to leave after positive tests a couple of weeks ago. And as was mentioned earlier, there's a bunch of players on Canada that have played 0 games, right? If they've been in the OHL or the WHL, they haven't even started. So that and there's players like that on every team, right? So I think that'll definitely be part of it. Who's rusty, who's not. In like all these guys who are playing in the KHL or in the Liga, right? I mentioned Shakir Mukhamadullin has 31 games in the KHL this year, which feels like a lot of experience compared to 0 out of Quinton Byfield, for instance, right?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting watching, especially like some of the pre-tournament games too. Like I think there's going to be a lot of like dropped passes, and there's going to be a lot of rust. The things that we joke about seeing when anytime that any of us go to like an NHL preseason game or something where it's just a little bit of a crapshoot and you don't really take it seriously, but these guys they're gonna have to get it together very fast. So that'll be interesting. I actually think it's gonna be I hate to say this as being a very patriotic Team Canada person, but like I kind of like the fact that it's gonna just not be that it's just Canada and US or Canada and Russia or whatever that are the favorites. It's like we don't know what's gonna happen. I'm always Team Chaos, so it'll be really exciting for sure.
Yeah, one of the things I always like about the World Juniors is it is chaotic. It is these players are unfinished hockey players, and they've got flaws and they make mistakes, and with the lack of games and the quarantining and all that thrown in, it's going to be a very messy hockey to watch, but it's going to be exciting, and it's going to create a lot of drama and a lot of I think we're going to see a lot of comebacks and blown leads throughout the pre-tournament games and into the group stage and then all the way into the medal round. And it's going to be so much fun.
I really hope this is a high-scoring tournament. I really, really do. Well, especially because we have teams hanging around like Austria with Marco Rossi. If Austria scores like 3 goals in a game, you could lose that game, right? Mm-hmm. If Austria is going to score 0 points every game, it's not so likely, right? So I really hope that we see the goalies struggle a little bit. I think it would make for a better tournament, especially like again Germany, Slovakia, Switzerland. Germany's first line is 3 first-rounders. They could definitely scare some teams, right? And it's like if you're Switzerland or Slovakia, I feel like relegation feels quite far away, right? But Germany could win 2 games easily, I think.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing is that they've gotten rid of the relegation for just this year because of everything.
Yeah.
So will we see teams just go out and especially those lower ranked teams, knowing that they're still coming back next year, they're not going to play for their top the top tournament live, so they can go out and be a little more aggressive and try and just see what they can do.
Yeah, try and actually put points up. Good point.
Mm-hmm.
So out of Switzerland has been one of those teams that have been on the cusp. They can create chaos. Slovakia is a team that can create chaos. With those 2 teams, what are we thinking? Do we think they have a chance to create that kind of chaos? Or is would you put Germany a little bit farther ahead of them?
So, like I said, Germany has the 3 forwards, right? Tim Stützle is a guy everyone will be watching this tournament. For a lot of people, it'll be the first time you see him, right? The other 2 forwards are Peterka and Lucas Reichel. Germany has a couple people who are like, you have heard of them maybe, other than that, but not a huge amount, right? There's not a ton, like there's no German defenseman who would be on Team Finland, right? So Germany is going to need to win games by scoring points. Slovakia has the best goaltender out of any of these 3 teams, I think. That's Samuel Halyav. He is, like he would probably start for Team Canada, which says more about Canada's goalies than him. But he's good, right? He's better than the Swiss goalies. The Swiss goalies both graduated last year, so they have brand new guys. We don't I don't know who will start. Maybe you guys can give me a guess on that. But Slovakia is one of these teams that's going to have to rely on their oldest players. They're one of the biggest teams in the tournament. But they have like 2 drafted players, right? And I think Switzerland is really going to struggle this year, actually. I think Switzerland had an old team last year. This year, all of those guys graduated. So we have a lot of new guys, and they've lost a ton, right? They lost all of their goaltenders from last year to start with. And then they just don't really have anyone, right? Which is the other issue. They've lost all the, right, Chicago, excuse me, Chicago just put Pius Suter onto their roster. The Swiss have lost even those types of guys, right? The guys who are maybe fringe NHL prospects who don't even get drafted. So we'll see. The reality is their average player is probably still better than the average German player, for instance, or the average Slovakian player. It'll be interesting. Yeah, like I said, that's sort of, these teams are all hoping they get into the round of 8 and then they lose to Russia or something, right? I think it's sort of a tough tournament for them. Or you get a 1-round upset maybe, and then you're playing Canada or Sweden or the USA for one of those semifinal spots, right?
The 2 defense prospects that they're talking about on Slovakia, Samuel Nasko, which is a draft pick this year for the Columbus Blue Jackets, and Oliver Turan, 6'5" guy. Big.
I think he's not the biggest guy in the tournament, but he's close. Like I said, Slovakia has the biggest average player rather, out of any team in this tournament, which, they're going to struggle to score, I think, which is good that they have the good goalie, but Slovakia might play some grindy 1-0 games. And then their forward is Chromiak. Chromiak is also 2020. I think LA.
He was drafted by LA in the 5th round.
There it is.
There's also Marco Stacha, which is a Giants draft pick for import draft, but he's been playing in of course hasn't been obviously not playing with Vancouver. So and then you got David Mudryk as well, an Oshawa General import draft pick as well. So but they've been playing in Europe. And then that's the other interesting aspect of this is this European ice or is this NHL ice?
It's NHL ice. It's NHL
ice. They're in Edmonton.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. But they're not like. They're not doing any. But I mean, that rust aspect of it is going to be that is going to be interesting. But the other side of that too is, no offense to the European crowds, but this, World Juniors, Heidi's brother would be one of 19,000 in Edmonton cheering the team on, which the Canadians on, which it has shown to be mostly that can be good, and also at times has been bad when they were in Vancouver. That was a bit of they didn't do here, right? So the crowd the non-crowd aspect of this, I wonder who that will end up favoring.
Yeah, very good point.
And using that to go into transition into Team Canada, the Flames do have 2 prospects who are going to be playing, looks like very key roles. You've got Jacob Pelche. Looks like he's lining up with Dylan Holloway and Alex Newhook on what's probably going to be the second line for Canada, and then Connor Zary looks like he's going to be given some defensive assignments by the coaching staff.
Yeah, I think so. The cool thing about Canada is that I think those lines are going to be given the opportunity to win their minutes, right? I don't think that Andre Tourigny is going to go into this crowning Kirby Dach or Quinton Byfield as the number 1 center. So I think you could see a couple guys really just have a great tournament because they get the minutes, right? They happen to be the first power play unit that scores, and then they're the first guys now. So I think Canada's roster choices are going to be really fascinating. I think they have a lot to do there, a lot of work maybe to do.
Well, I'm particularly intrigued to see Connor Zary, especially because of how Treliving made all these moves basically to move back to get him. I'm excited to see him. I'm in it, and I know it's not as sexy per se to watch a Quinton Byfield or a Kirby Dach in an offensive role, but I think for the Flames specifically, having a guy in a defensive role, I think long term will help this organization. I see a lot of Bo Horvat qualities. That's been the kind of one of the big comparisons. Sean's going to pat himself back here with that, but that I think is great, and I'm really excited for Jacob Pelche. I think that this is one of those sort of Matthew Tkachuk guys. I'm not comparing him to Matthew Tkachuk, but it will make the Flames harder to play with going forward, and that's what excites me too.
I think it's quite telling that, like, in terms of profile, he seems to profile quite similarly to, like, for instance, a guy like Dylan Dubé, where everyone is like, yeah, this guy's a captain, he's playing defense, he's doing all the little things right. I think it's interesting that those are consistent Treliving draft pick traits, right? It's clearly something he values is the attention to detail. And I think it's worked really well for him, which is one of the reasons why it's cool to see both Pelche and Zary make this team. I definitely didn't think it was possible, but you can't really complain with any of this Team Canada roster, so it must have been right,
Yeah, I'm really excited to watch Zary because and Tom will know this. Just I'm just going to say that honestly, like the kind of the crapshoot, the like differing opinions about the Flames defense and who's going to play what and all that stuff in the next year or so. So it'll be interesting to see how he does and whether he's going to be able to make the team sooner rather than later, and whether he'll who he's going to end up replacing as well on the actual NHL roster. So that's what I'm kind of interested to see and to watch him play for.
I think this is something that I've heard floated in a couple different places. I think it might also be interesting if we see the WHL or the OHL push back their seasons even further. Guys like Connor Zary might actually have the opportunity to play in the NHL before they can even go to the WHL. So I think we might see a lot of people, like, for instance, Anton Lundell. I think we might see him get a tryout just because they can, right? Like I said, if the WHL keeps getting pushed back, if the OHL keeps getting pushed back, if the NCAA stays canceled, right? Or the parts of it that are canceled, it'll be right like the Ivy League universities, right? So, I think that might be an interesting thing to watch as well. If anyone can sort of make the jump after this tournament because of a particularly good showing or whatever.
Yeah, and then other than Team Canada and the Flames prospects, who are you've mentioned Marco Rossi. Who are the big players that you want to watch, and the ones that maybe other people don't know that you want to watch?
So, like, Marco Rossi, again, for a lot of people, this will be like his step onto the stage. And if Austria is a good team, it's because Marco Rossi is a good player, right? So he's my big, like, that's the guy to watch. Tim Stützle is like that for Germany, but less, right? He's got more help. Germany's in an easier division, an easier group, excuse me. Some other guys that really stood out to me. So one of the guys I want to watch is Jan Mysak, who is the Czech Republic, right? He'll probably be their first line center. He was supposed to be a first rounder. He was going to be picked like 15th, 18th, right? And and Montreal took him at 50th or something like this. So I'll be interested to see how he stacks up, because he is the Czech Republic guy, right? In terms of being the all situations center. So he really needs so he'll be, interesting to watch just because of where he was drafted. I think for Sweden, we mentioned Lucas Raymond already, Alexander Holtz. Again, if they go far, it's because those guys are doing well. I think. Some other cool guys. There's a bunch of draft eligibles. There's Czech Republic has a defenseman called Stanislav Svozil, who played more games in the Czech Republic Adult League last year than Jágr. He won the Rookie of the Year for the Extraliga. So we'll see how much he plays, right? He's a 17-year-old who's playing in a 19-year-old tournament. But this will be his first opportunity to showcase himself for this draft, right? Sweden's got Jesper Wallstedt, who, he's playing behind one of the better goalies, so I don't think he'll play that many games, but he's probably a first rounder in 2021. So that's your Yaroslav Askarov type of guy from last year. Who else have we got? I think that the Russian team will be very interesting. I think there's a lot of guys like Podkolzin, for instance, right? How much game have you watched of Podkolzin? This is going to be his first really big tournament on the spotlight, where he can, right? If he's good this tournament, then Vancouver is going to be a lot more excited than they were 6 months ago, right? So I think the Russian, and again, because the Russian team is so good this year, right? I think they'll be fascinating. There's a Russian defenseman called Daniil Chayka, who might have shown up on some of your searches. He's draft eligible this year as well. I think he'll be quite interesting. Again, right? Russia, you could have anyone who's good. It's sort of like with the Canadian forwards. If guys are playing well, they'll probably get more minutes, right? So it's possible that he has this big coming out party. And Chinakhov as well is so interesting for me on Team Russia, because, I've watched 8 KHL highlights of him, and then that's it, basically. So I'd love to know what Columbus has there.
Yeah. That is an interesting thing. I'm just going through here who's Mackenzie's top picks here. We've got Owen Power, the top.
He didn't make it.
No,
Michigan didn't release him for Canada.
Exactly.
We've been going through some of these other names here. This is good podcasting, but
that's okay. So both of the guys, like Chayka, I don't think will be a first rounder this year. The Czech guy I mentioned, Stanislav Svozil, probably will be, although he'll be in the 20s probably. There's, like I said, Jesper Wallstedt on Sweden is likely to be a first rounder. He might go Askarov type of area. He might drop to Carter Hart type of area. We'll see. The 2021 draft is a long way away.
Yeah.
Daniil Chayka. The Russian defense is so interesting. There's another guy on there, Chistyakov. Chistyakov is a KHLer. And he's completely not on my radar. So it's the Russian team is very interesting to me. Especially their forwards there's a lot of good forwards here, and it's hard to tell, right? Because so many people don't follow Russian prospects. The Russian team is going to surprise people, I think. There's a lot of people who are playing adult hockey, and again, they've been playing 3, 4, 6 weeks now, right? I think the Russian team might be a lot more polished than people think.
I think they've got Igor Larionov heading up the Russian team. Podkolzin is their captain. This is his third World Juniors. The Canucks fans are expecting big things from him in this tournament.
At this point, he's got to show something, right?
Because he does everything. He does all the small things correct, but he can't seem to get on the he can't seem to get out of the politics of SKA in the KHL. And he just keeps getting thrown out there as part of the fourth line kid line on SKA. So you gotta really hope, me as a Canucks fan and other Canucks fans, that he can take this opportunity and just show the level of player that we think he is.
My last quick question before for me is tying into the Flames, not World Juniors, but Yusuf Valimaki was in the news. They're making the odds. The Athletic was doing the odds of who would be the favorites for all of the awards, and Yusuf Valimaki felt like he was snubbed a little bit. I think for the Flames, that's one of the big questions coming into the new season. Is Yusuf Valimaki? What do you think, Tom? Where is he at? What are you expecting from Yusuf for the upcoming season?
So the praise for Yusuf Valimaki has been like from every side, sublime all the way through. Everyone's like, this is one of the best guys in Liga. Is Yusuf Valimaki gonna I don't think he wins the Calder. I don't know if that's. I think that forwards win the Calder so much more often, right? So I don't think Yusuf Valimaki is the best rookie in the league next year. He'll be incredible, I think. I've been talking about this for a while. I think that the Flames have made a good pick in Valimaki, but also I think that I was really hesitant on Valimaki because of his injury, and I think that after watching him play 23 games or whatever it was, 25 games against adults, where he didn't seem to have lost a step, right? It seems like that injury was an issue for him. The knee, the ankle, which was the year before, right? Yusuf Valimaki has been ready to step into the NHL for 18 months now almost. Mm-hmm. So definitely excited. I think that the big question for having the best season, right? Like you think of someone like Shane Gostis there, for instance. He got top power play time, and I don't know if Yusuf Valimaki is going to get that. I think that even if Giordano starts losing minutes, I think you probably give them to Anderson, right? And I've been seeing some people talk about putting Hanifin on the power play. I don't know about that, but I think that's more likely than Valimaki, at least to start. So I think he might just get held back by the opportunity, right? He's not going to play huge penalty kill minutes. He's not going to play more minutes than Giordano or Anderson do. He's not going to play more minutes than Hanifin does, right? So I think that's the thing about Valimaki. You have to be on the top power play unit if you want to score 60 points, right? So.
Yeah, I think that's it. That it's going to be an interesting. I mean, we'll get into this more, but that's the question: is does the Flame defense from Hamilton or Hanifin, not Hamilton, Hanifin, Valimaki, and even Oliver Shillington, does their play reduce the ice time for Giordano this year, or that'll be one of the big questions going forward. Sean, Heidi, did you have anything else you wanted to ask?
The only thing I was going to say is I was going to ask Tom what his plans are to actually watch these games, because a lot of these games are 3, 4 o'clock in the morning.
That's right. So there's 3 time slots. The early game is on at 8. The middle game, which is all the Canadian games, are on at midnight. And then the late game is on at 3 a.m. So unfortunately, those games are unlikely to be watched. We'll see how it goes. I'll see how committed I am to staying up. But it's definitely it's a struggle, and that's one of the things about that's one of the reasons why it's hard to follow the World Juniors here. It just doesn't. The time zones just don't work out super well.
Yeah. Although I mean, you've lived in Canada where they've had the tournament in Europe or whatever, and it's been the same thing where it's like we've had to get up to watch gold medal games super early and stuff like that too. So I guess I've been watching a lot of the highlights.
Yeah, I've been talking about it, so I'm definitely there. Like somewhere in me, it might happen, right? I'm still vaccinated.
Yeah, and Tom will know that there's people like from like the Flames Discord who like will like watch like race it, like watch Formula One racing, and like we'll watch it at like 4 a.m. and get up and watch it at 4 a.m. Or you can be like me, who had major insomnia this morning and was watching Liverpool at 5 a.m. because I couldn't sleep. So I saw that there was a Liverpool game on at 5 o'clock this morning, so I put it on. So you never know. Sometimes you just end up watching.
The beautiful thing about lockdown, right, is that you can just stay up until 6 a.m. and then wake up at 4:45 the next day.
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah. Exactly.
Maybe.
All right.
Yeah, that's my plans for watching the World Juniors. Get up way too late.
Get up way too late. That's totally fair. Well, Tom, I totally appreciate you taking the time to come on. Can we follow you on social medias? Or how do we find you?
No. No, maybe next time. I was thinking about putting together a Twitter account for this, but right now the answer is no. If that changes, I'll let you know.
Okay, we would.
You might be able to track them down on
That's
Reddit.
Right. If anyone has questions, you can direct them to Heidi. It's shitty, but for this week, that's what you'll have to do.
That's actually true. You can tweet me at Heidi Maysballs if you have questions for him, and I will pass them on because I know how to get a hold of him. Yeah,
exactly.
All right. You sound like a spy.
You guys have a good day. I appreciate that.
We threw Heidi Maysballs, and she will be able to find the Born Identity or something.
Yeah.
Contact my people.
Yeah.
And our people will contact your people.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Have a nice night, guys.
Yeah. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Tom. Bye.
Bye.
So that was Tom Escher from Amsterdam. Flames Reddit Discord coming on.
Yeah.
Really good interview, really revealing some of the things that are I learned a lot. I like learning things.
Yeah, and if anybody watches this who like kind of recognizes that name or might recognize that face, there's the odd people that we all know that will be like, oh, I know who that is, and they'll know exactly how to track them down on Reddit. So I won't spill any secrets though. So if you really want to get a hold of him, you can tweet me, or you can tweet the podcast account.
Sure.
And I'll let you know.
While we're waiting for our next guest, do we want to talk about anything in particular now?
Well, we can dive into a little bit of the news of the week now, with the NHL looking like they're starting to make headway towards a new season. Looks like they've at least the NHL owners and the PA have discussed, have agreed upon everything that they need to agree upon to make this work, and just waiting on making sure that they have all of the approvals from all the local and local, regional, provincial, state, national governments to make sure it works. I think the major issue right now is that there's one province holding out with some questions. I think the NHL should be able to answer them and get them on board. And then we'll be able to hopefully start watching some NHL hockey come middle of January.
Yeah, so the non-playoff bubble teams are scheduled to start their camp on December 30th. The bubble teams will start on January 3rd. And the season is expected to start. The 56-game season is expected to start January 13th. We don't have a schedule yet. As mentioned here, we've got some stuff to work out. The Board of Governors are meeting tomorrow to have their vote, which I think is basically a rubber stamp idea. But I guess still. I was saying this to Sean and Heidi off air. I'm still a little cynical. I'm one of the few here, but I know that everything looks good, but there still seems to be some hurdles to go through. Like, as an example, you have the Arizona Sharks. Can we call them that? We've got Winnipeg that's still in a situation where I don't know where they're going to be playing. We've got the one province that has some concerns. We don't know who that is. There's still a lot of stuff that we need to get through this January 13th date that is making me feel a little cynical that we are going to start on January 13th.
Yeah, I completely agree with all what you're saying there. I think I'm not focusing on that January 13th date. I'm focusing more on the fact that they're making headway, and if it's delayed a week, if it's delayed a couple of weeks, that's fine.
Yeah.
Let's just find a way to bring the NHL back and do it in a safe way under these current conditions, and make sure that they're doing all their due diligence to make sure that the players, the coaches, the staff, anyone working in the arenas are all as safe as possible. Because we all, as much as we all want hockey back, we want to make sure that no one's putting themselves at undue risk to make it happen.
Heidi, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm with Sean with that. Like, I'll just be happy to have it back. It will not surprise me if it's past that 13th date. I know I always get excited as I follow most of the Flames on social media, and I'm slowly seeing them all come back to Calgary, and they have to all do quarantine when they come back. So they do need to be back within a couple weeks so that they can start skating and stuff like that. Just with like everything, like it's not just hockey. I know with me, it's with work and stuff too, that you don't know exactly when you're going to go back, and you don't know, everything is so up in the air. You don't know how Christmas is going to, how going to be affected for everything. So yeah, as long as it comes back, and sometimes if it doesn't come back till February 1st or whatever, then that's fine with me too. As long as it comes back, because I do miss it.
Yes, I agree. Well, we will continue on that a little bit. We have joining us with his Toronto Blue Jay. Are they now the Tampa Blue? No, well, there still could be. It's the Tampa Raptors. So it's
the Tampa Raptors.
We the ocean instead of we the north. But we got Derek Neumeier join us. Derek, how are you?
I'm doing well, folks. Thank you for having me. It's nice to be back. Not my first time with you guys, so nice to see you again.
Nice to have you. I guess kind of how have you been? How have you been dealing with this pandemic in terms of prospect search? What have you been up to? I guess let's start there, and then we'll dive into the World Juniors.
Well, it's definitely been an interesting few months. So the draft obviously got pushed back into October, was it, when the draft was? And I also, for those who don't know, write for a website called Defending Big D, which is all about the Dallas Stars, who happened to make it all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals. So there was a stretch of about 2 months where my life was completely consumed by hockey, where I was trying to get all these draft reports done and trying to, get like scout guys that I hadn't seen yet prior to the draft to update my own draft list. And of course, the Stars were playing a very condensed schedule, every other night, sometimes back-to-back nights in the playoffs. So it was a very hectic time. So I'm kind of a little bit happy that things are a little bit quieter now. I mean, obviously, I miss hockey. I miss going to the Saddle Dome, where I watch Calgary Hitmen games up in the press box and scout prospects out of the WHL. And I also drive around in different parts of Alberta to scout AJHL games. So it's been different doing all the work from my house. But, you manage, you do the best you can. There's been hockey in some places in Europe for the last few months. There's lots of hockey in Russia. They haven't slowed down at all. Sweden had their under-20 league going for a while. Some top prospects are playing in the SHL. So I've been able to still keep myself scouting, do a lot of that, watching a lot more Swedish hockey and Russian hockey than I do in a normal year so far. But it's all still hockey, and there's a lot of good prospects to watch.
Yeah. Yeah, we were just getting onto that with Tom, and I think one of the things that he brought up is maybe we'll kind of get your perspective on here since you've watched it. Where are you with Russia? Tom thinks that they're the most interesting team of this junior tournament because we don't know what we're going to get. Some have them as a favorite, some are not sure. What are you feeling about with Russia?
I think this is probably the best team that Russia's fielded for the World Juniors in quite some time. And the main reason being that they've got balance and they've got talent at all positions. So really Russia's hopes are going to start and probably end with Yaroslav Askarov between the pipes. He's the highest drafted Russian goaltender ever. He's been stellar at international events throughout his junior career, with the exception being last year's World Juniors, where he was a little shaky, but he was 17. No one that age really succeeds between the pipes in that tournament. So he alone could steal this whole tournament for Russia, as he's done at other international events in the past. But they've got a good team. The biggest thing with Russia, their biggest weakness, in events usually is their defense. It's usually pretty thin. But this year they've got a really good group. Danil Cheka, who plays for the Guelph Storm normally. This season he's been playing in Russia, including up in the pro leagues. He's really good. Shakir Mukhamadullin is a really interesting defenseman with a huge range. He's been playing in the KHL all year. Yan Kuznetsov is good. Kirill Kirsanov, Artemi Niazev. So they've got a deep group, and they've got guys who can fill kind of every role. They've got offensive players. They've got guys who can shut down. So they've got different things to look for. And up front, they're pretty good too. Vasily Podkolzin has a lot of success internationally. He's talented. Rodion Amirov, who was drafted in the first round by the Toronto Maple Leafs, he is incredibly skilled. He's fun to watch. Igor Afanaseyev is talented, and he's had some success in Russia this year. So I think they're going to be one of the 3 or 4 top teams to watch out for in this tournament. I think they're going to be a top contender.
One of the things that we discussed with Tom was the fact that out of all the skaters on Russia, there's one right shot.
Yeah,
it's quite interesting, and I know we kind of over focusing on that at times. Skill's always going to override that, but as that's going to be that's something that when I realized that, I was like, whoa, that's going to be something that the coaches could potentially exploit. With Russia.
It's true, and that's something that's been true for the Russians for a while now. I think even last year at the event they were just surprisingly short on right shot players. I don't know why. It's just probably just weird luck and a numbers game more than anything else. I don't think there's any reason why they would have a shortage of guys shooting one hand. But you're right, it could be something that other teams could exploit. With this age group, with the Podkolzins and the Amirovs and the Askarovs, internationally over the last few years, with these same guys at events like the Holinka and the U18s, they have had to rely quite a lot on Askarov to steal them a lot of games. So it could be something to watch out for sure, because defensemen, when they play on their weak side, well, although some guys can handle it, and in Russia specifically, they like to have guys in their offside a little bit more than you see in North America. But I think it will be something that coaches would at least, kind of prod at and try and focus on and see if there are any weaknesses there.
What about Sweden?
Oh man, it's really sad. I feel bad for Sweden. I think this could have been one of the best groups that they fielded for this event in a long time. You've got some really high-end offensive players with Alexander Holtz and Lucas Raymond. They have a really good deep blue line as they usually do. They've got 2 really good goaltenders in Jesper Wallstedt, who is one of the best goaltenders in the Swedish Pro League so far this season, and Hugo Alnefelt, who has been really good for them internationally for the last couple of years. So I thought, if you would have asked me a few months ago what they could have done, I would have said they would have been a strong contender for gold. But they've been kind of hit by the coronavirus. They've had some players who've had to stay home. William Eklund, a prospect eligible for this year, who's been really, really good in the Swedish top league, playing on the same team as Alexander Holtz. He's not there. I think Carl Henriksen is another one who's not there, if I recall. He was usually the center between Holtz and Raymond internationally in the last couple of years. So it's tough. I don't think you can ever fully count out Sweden, because they still have some very talented players to work with. But this is definitely not their deepest roster. They have a few guys that probably wouldn't be there if they didn't have other guys that have been, held back. They're missing some of their coaching staff as well. So it seems like there's a lot of turmoil going on, and I could see it causing some problems for them, especially since we have really strong Russian, Canadian, and American teams for them to contend with.
On Sweden, probably one of the benefactors of all this, the unfortunate COVID cases on the team is Arvid Kosmar, a late round pick for the Canucks. Do you have any insight on him and where he could slot in?
I would have to double check my notes. I know he's someone that I've seen a few times, but it's been a little while. I don't think I've really watched him much since his draft year. So I don't think I have the best book on him. I know he's played some pro. I'm just looking at his elite prospects page now. I remember him being a pretty good playmaker with someone with some good offensive sense, a good understanding of how the play is unfolding around him and how he can manipulate it. But beyond that, I honestly don't have the best of recollection about him.
I think one of the big questions for Canucks going into this is Podkolzin. You mentioned he has had international success, but he's also been dealing with a lot of politics and SKA. What are we expecting from him? What would be a good tournament for Podkolzin for your perspective? If you're a Canucks fan, what should we hope or expect as a good tournament for Podkolzin?
To be a force in multiple different ways. He's the type of guy who can really cause damage offensively. He's a great shot. He's good around the net, but he can be a physical presence. He can really open up the ice with his speed, his explosiveness, and I think that can be utilized even if it doesn't end up in the net. If you're bursting through the neutral zone and you're pushing defenders back and you're helping your team buy some time to set up in the offensive zone, that can have a really pronounced effect when it comes to puck possession and setting up scoring chances over time. So I think that's what we should expect out of him. I think he's going to be fast. He's going to be physical, and I expect him and Mirov to probably be going toe-to-toe for the scoring lead for the Russian team. I don't think he's going to put up a whole ton of points, but I would say it's more his complete game is going to be what we're looking for. He's been playing in the KHL for a while, and he hasn't been getting, the best of ice time. So he's had to learn to play a bit more of a checking role, play with more defensive-minded players. So I think we could see him be a really good two-way or three-zone player in this event. And I think that's something that would definitely help the Russian team, because I don't think they're going to have enough scoring power to really blow teams out of the water. I think they're going to have to play a little bit more of a complete game and hope that, the defense and Askarov can help them out. But yeah, I think he'll probably put up around a point per game, but I would expect to see him more be like a shift to shift kind of player who sets a tone and pushes the pace for his team.
And then also on Russia, you've got someone who I may have just been my not paying attention enough, but I was a little surprised to see Yan Kuznetsov make the team. But where do you see him sliding in? What do you expect from him in this tournament?
So Kuznetsov has played with the Russians internationally in the past. He actually had a really nice showing at the World Junior A Challenge last year. I think he joined them late due to some NCAA commitments, and he joined them later on in the tournament and helped them win gold. He was really good in that tournament. He's a sturdy defensive defenseman. He's not going to be doing end-to-end puck rushes. He's not going to be walking the blue line. He's not going to be putting up a lot of points, but they have other guys who can play a bit more of that style. So I still think he's going to play a big role for the Russians, but I think he's going to be more of that defensive-minded, shutdown guy, penalty killer. He'll probably see a lot of matchups against the better opponents on other teams. So, he might go up against like the Dock line with Canada, or go up against like Zegras and Turcotte for the Americans. So I think he'll still play an important role. It's good to know what sort of role he's going to be asked to play, because they have other guys who are better at moving the puck and better at creating offensive chances. So I think they're going to rely on him much more as a defensive player.
To jump to Canada here for a quick second and kind of sticking with Flames prospects, what are we Connor Zary and Jacob Pelche, the two big Flame prospects. Pelche scheduled to play with Newhook. Zary expected to play a defensive role. What for Flames fans? What would be a good expectation for them?
I think they're going to be a bit of that pesty kind of line for the Canadians. I mean, Canada's got honestly just more skilled players who can play on the power play and take those nice defensive zone matchups. offensive zone matchups. I think you're going to see like guys like Zeri and Pelche play more of that energy, defensive style play, and that's something that Hockey Canada loves to do in this tournament. They love to have a line that's physical and it's fast. They get in your face. They try to get under the skin of the opposing players, and that's something that Zeri can do well. That's something that Pelche can do well. I mean, obviously these guys are talented because on their teams in Kamloops and Pelche, I forget where he's playing now, if it's Moncton or not. But I know both these guys have offensive skill with the teams they normally play with. But on a team like Canada where there's so much depth, I think they're going to be trusted to play more of a defensive checking, pest energy kind of role. But that's not a bad thing necessarily because those guys can play that role well. And I think that'll be a good fit for them on this Canadian team.
Yeah, we were talking before about how it's funny because that seems how like the Flames prospects seem to get picked now. Those high energy, pesky guys that are exactly play that kind of role for sure.
And it fits, it fits kind of what the Flames are trying to do. It fits their team mentality, their vibe. You look at someone like Dylan Dubé, he plays that role. He's not the most skilled guy, he's not the biggest, he's not the fastest, but he outworks pretty much everyone he goes up against. And he's been a revelation for them. He's been a great find as a second-round pick. He was great in the playoffs for them in that series against Dallas. So I think it's not necessarily a bad thing that the Flames are trying to draft players that are similar, because I think it kind of fits the identity that they're going for, this kind of blue-collar identity. And when you're not picking in the top 3 or the top 5 or the top 10 at the draft ever, you kind of have to rely on a different sort of strategy. You might not be able to pick the most purely skilled guys, but if you can direct your draft in a way that has more of a plan or a purpose, that can also work out.
Yeah, I think too, like the Flames like those guys too. They're getting a little bit smarter about picking these guys that are good. They're not just good players, they're good teammates. They're good in their locker room. We've been, as a Flames fan, like we've been snubbed by a couple guys like Neil and stuff that just have not been the greatest locker room type of guys, and I think they're learning that now.
Yeah, there are a few other names that you could be added to that list. Phaneuf, Weidman. I think the Flames kind of got a little sick of that sort of thing happening in the organization and wanted to correct as much as they had to. But it's not a bad strategy to go for at all. It worked with Dubé. Pelche was a great pick where they picked him. Zeri was a great pick where they picked him. I think these guys are going to be on the Flames not too far into the future, and I think they're going to be good players. They're going to be around for a long time.
Yeah, there's already speculation that Zeri could possibly make the team this year. It'll be fun to watch him and to see how that goes, because the Flames defense is just up in the air for me. I know personally, and I think for a lot of fans as well.
Mm-hmm.
What are, I guess, kind of sticking with Canada here as well. You talked about Zeri and Pelche. What is one player on the Canadian team that you think is going to be sort of the breakout star? Who's the guy that at the end of the tournament we're going to be like, holy crap, I did not realize blank was this good?
There's definitely a lot of options there to pick from, no doubt about that. I think Quinton Byfield is going to be a really big player for Canada this year, especially after how he didn't have a great event last year. He didn't get a lot of opportunity. He was the 13th forward. So I think there's going to be a lot of like a bit of a chip on his shoulder to kind of prove himself this time. So I don't think you can necessarily call him like a breakout player because he was such a high draft pick and everyone knows he's good, but I think he's going to be really good. Jack Quinn, I think, is going to surprise a lot of people. He can put the puck in the net as good as anyone in this event, and he's going to have some very talented players to feed him the puck. So I could see him being a scoring menace. Connor McMichael is really good. He was great at the event last year, so he's got some experience to build off of. He could be a real force for them. And I'm also going to dip a little bit into my Dallas Stars background here and say Thomas Harley. Thomas Harley is a very, very talented player. He's big at about 6'3". He's a gorgeous skater. He can handle the puck at full speed. He can do a little bit of everything. And what's interesting about Harley is that he was with the Stars during the team's playoff run. So he had about 2 months or whatever it was with the NHL team with the coaches, around all the other guys. He's hanging out with John Klingberg and Miro Heiskanen and Esa Lindell. He was absorbing a lot from that experience, and I think he could be a guy who applies a lot of that in this tournament and has a really, really good showing, because I don't think you can put a price on that kind of development boost, just getting to be around an NHL team for that long. I think that's something that he has that very few players in this tournament will have. It'll be an advantage.
Well, and I think one of the things with this tournament is the intangibles around it, with being in a bubble per se. You have Harley that has experienced that bubble. That will be an advantage, I think, going forward. And I kind of said this before, but this is sort of, the juniors are kind of the preview of the Canadian division, where this is a wide open tournament, and depending on things that happen, it could be anyone can win this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that this, having whatever experience like Harley in that bubble, understanding that Edmonton bubble, which I don't imagine will be any different than what the NHL bubble is going to be a huge advantage for Canada, I think.
Mm-hmm. I think so too. Players that have been through it a little bit will have a little bit more preparedness for it. I think that experience will be something that comes in handy. And it's going to be interesting to sort of shift gears a little bit here. It's going to be interesting to see how this tournament affects NHL training camps in the near future, because you're going to have some guys that are going to be challenging for positions on NHL teams that are getting really good game action here. You've got someone like Harley who's going to be playing a lot of minutes. He could be someone who pushes for a spot on the Dallas Blue Line. Bowen Byram, I think he's already kind of expected to make a big push for the Colorado lineup, but he's going to play a lot of minutes in this. He's going to be, going up against the best players in other teams. He's going to be in full flight come that Colorado Avalanche training camp, whereas a lot of other guys are still going to be shaking off a lot of that rust. So I think it's going to be really interesting. It's going to be a great opportunity, really, for a lot of these players to make NHL teams that, that opportunity might not have been there in a normal non-pandemic year.
Yeah, that was something that Tom said as well. He's talking about that idea of maybe you see Connor Zary play a couple of games this year for the Flames, or you could see, just to throw it out there, I'm not saying that this would happen, Sean, but a Pod Colson could play, or a Hoglander could play a couple of games for the Canucks this year because they have that game action, and that could be an opportunity to do that. I guess the question would be, is because this is a shortened season, how you want to play that in terms of getting off to a good start.
Yeah, well, Pod Colson won't play. He's still under contract with SKA for the rest of this season. But Hoglander's coming over. I believe he played his last game in the SHL yesterday, and is on his way to Vancouver for in prep for training camp. I could see him getting some games, but with, I think more specifically going back to the World Juniors, I think there's going to be players who are going to play. Like on Team Sweden, we saw Tobias Bjornfot get some games last year with LA. You have Ville Heinola played a few games with Winnipeg last year, and I think both those are going to get a significant amount of games this year for both those teams. I don't know why that you wouldn't play them, but they're going to be. So I think there will be some surprises with these potential taxi squads, who they actually carry as spare forwards and everything, especially with potential of the WHL and the OHL pushing their season starts back. Because if that's the case, you might as well keep these kids. And have them practicing with your team and seeing what they can do and develop them, have more control over their development with that.
Mm-hmm. Same with the AHL too, honestly, because you've got guys like Trevor Zegras who would be playing in the AHL right now if the AHL were playing. They've already left college. I could see him making the Anaheim Ducks roster when hockey starts, because he's one of their top prospects. He's good. Is he ready for the NHL? It's hard to say, but I don't think the Ducks have anything to lose by keeping him around and seeing what happens. He's young. He needs to play. Young guys need to play to develop, and he's not going back to the NCAA. He's not going to be playing the AHL for who knows how long. So I think someone like him is going to get a chance to stay in Anaheim and play games in the NHL because he's got to play somewhere. And it's going to be really fascinating to see how a lot of NHL teams handle these sorts of situations. To go back to Harley in Dallas, when's the OHL going to be playing again? Who knows? Even if the AHL starts up before, he's not eligible to go to the AHL. So do you keep him in Dallas and maybe push out an older guy who might be better suited to play on the roster, someone like Joel Hanley or Taylor Fadoon, just so he can keep that game action? Or do you send him back to the OHL and just tell him to just do his off-ice training and his skate practice? And I don't know. It's going to be really interesting to see how a lot of teams handle this, because there's a lot of moving parts and there's not necessarily a clear-cut answer like there is in a normal year.
Well, LA Kings specifically, just with that, they've got Byfield and Turcotte both signed. Both Turcotte is in the same boat as Zegras, I believe, and can't go back to the NCAA because he's signed. You don't know what the AHL is going to look like, so you might as well keep him there. And then you've got Byfield, who is with the OHL. You don't know when that's starting up. So that will be very interesting because they'd be almost competing for the same spot.
Almost, yeah. And it's easier for teams like Los Angeles and Anaheim because I don't think anyone's really expecting them to be strong contenders. They've got young rosters. There are openings for these types of guys. But if you're a young guy and you're trying to crack like Tampa Bay or Pittsburgh or Washington or one of these teams that's been good for a long time, it's like, well, good luck. That could be a challenge.
Well, even Jake Sanderson in Ottawa, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have that. You give him that opportunity to spend time with Thomas Chabot, Devin's best defenseman in Canada, on playing on a Canadian team. That's going to be huge for him.
Mm-hmm.
And even Tim Stutzel. I think that just creates opportunity for that Senator fan base to get excited about that team going forward.
Well, again, Jake Sanderson's not signed. I don't know if, and he's playing for North Dakota, who are still playing in the NCAA. They're one of the few teams that are playing. They're not. So I think he's probably going back. Stutzel, I don't know his contract situation with Germany or in that, but those ones are a little less likely to happen. But it's going to be interesting to see what they do with the players that are more like. Are more in the OHL and the WHL situation where you don't know when that season's starting.
European players do have an advantage in this because even if they sign their entry-level contract, in most cases they're still able to go back to Europe and play and continue playing over there. Whereas with the NCAA, it's a lot more stringent.
Mm-hmm.
So once you're out, you're out. So
yeah. And that's the same thing with Hoglander on the Canucks. He still has an ability to go back to Sweden, go back and play for Rögle after if he doesn't make the team out of camp. But I do honestly think that they're going to give him at least a taxi squad spot out of camp and just see what he can do, at least until the AHL, until they know what the AHL looks like.
And it's as we talked about a few minutes ago. It's nice to have guys who already have warm legs. Hoglander's been playing against men in Sweden for a while. He's fresh. He's going to be playing at this event. He'll be fresh from that. So even if you have other guys in your organization that you think are going to be sticking around for the entirety of the season, even if you just view Hoglander as like a short-term thing, he's still a pretty good short-term option because he's going to be a little bit fresher than anyone else is.
Fresher, playing with super high confidence.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? Maybe we'll see some more lacrosse goals out of him, maybe at the NHL level.
I think with how the pandemic has gone and the absence of hockey, I think we need some lacrosse goals at the World Juniors just to keep everyone happy and raise everyone's spirits a little bit.
Yeah. Just to quickly, the other thing I with Harley specifically, when you thought this, if the OHL is coming back, I think one of the questions was around the body checking. Did that ever get settled? Does anyone know?
I don't recall exactly where things are right now. I know this was still being discussed, and I think there was some discrepancy between like Doug Ford and the one minister who had initially announced it. I would have to do some checking to find out. I'm not 100% sure what the current status of things are, or if they even made a final decision yet. It might be something they're still deliberating. But I don't know how that would work out at all. I mean, theoretically, you can play hockey without body checking by all means, but there's just so much backlash about it. I mean, I understand both sides of the argument because it's a delicate situation, and the player safety is important. And that's true for everyone with regards to COVID, so it's going to be fascinating to see how that goes, but I don't know if there has been a final decision made yet.
Yeah. Because I would think that would play a huge decision on what you're doing with Harley, right? If you want him to play, you want him to play in a league, play him in a situation where you're getting as close to NHL style as possible.
Mm-hmm. And with someone like Harley specifically, he's got the frame to work with, but he's not necessarily a physical player. He's always been a bit of a gentle giant. So I think that would be something that you want to see him working on. It's actually one of the more important things development-wise that he still needs to work on. He needs to be better at using his body, not to be a goon or anything, but to box out players, to pin them against the walls. These are physical things that are important. And of course, every now and again, you need to lay a body check to separate the man from the puck. So these are things that he still needs to work on. The skill, the puck skill, the skating, that's already there. So I think it is. I think that will factor into some teams' decisions, not just Dallas and Harley, but a lot of other guys as well. How is that going to be the right environment for them to send them back to the OHL if that ends up being the new rule?
Yeah. Just sticking with Canada here for a couple more things here. My breakout star from the bubble, for me, one of them was Kirby Dach. I was really that was a revelation to me, that in that Chicago Edmonton series. What do we expect from him? I would think he's going to be one of the best players in this tournament.
I think so too. Obviously it's hard to really say anything too definitively, but I wouldn't be surprised if Dach is the tournament MVP for a number of reasons. One, he's immensely skilled, just incredibly talented, a guy who can do so many different things. I've mentioned this on Twitter a few times before, but in his draft year where, Jack Hughes went first overall and Kaapo Kakko went second, the single best game I scouted out of any player that season was a game I watched of Dach in Calgary. And he was just dominant in a way that I hadn't seen anyone else dominate a game that season. And now on top of that, you've got a full season of NHL experience. He was with Chicago the whole time. Or I think he actually might have done a small stint in the AHL or went back. I'd have to double check. But I know for the vast majority of the season, he was in Chicago. And he was really good. He was one of their better players, especially in the bubble, especially as the season went along. So I don't think that experience is something that you can replicate if you don't have it. So the fact that he's going into this event with that much experience, and you're going up against guys who, some of them are playing pro in Sweden and Russia and Finland, and that's valuable too. But I think that experience that Dach has I think that's going to be a huge advantage. And he's not going to have to do everything by himself on Canada. It's not like he's going to be a man on an island. He's going to have other people that can handle heavy lifting if need be, if he needs a shift off, if he needs to take a break, if he's having a rough game. He has other guys that can pitch in. So I think the whole situation is perfectly primed for Dach to really run away with this tournament. Like I said, I won't be surprised if he wins MVP. A lot of things could happen, but that would be my prediction if I were to make one.
Sean, Heidi, did you?
What are you expecting out of Bowen Byram this tournament? There was a lot of press going into last tournament about him, and he didn't have a bad tournament, but he didn't necessarily wow. I think a lot of people were really hoping for.
Mm-hmm. Byram is an interesting case. On one hand, he's not the type of guy who's going to wow you most of the time anyways. It's just not really his type of hockey. He's not like someone like Quinn Hughes who can make these beautiful plays that, pull you out of your seat. Byram's a lot more methodical, a lot more, he plays more with pace. He controls the game. He's much closer to someone like Rasmus Dahlin, where he just logs a lot of minutes and he's always making the right decisions. So I think having him be at the event last year will be a huge boon. I think that'll be a big experience for him. I think he's going to play a lot of minutes for Canada. He's been a big part of their teams internationally in the past. They know him. He knows them. He's a guy who's used to being a leader. He's used to, taking charge, and he was part of the leadership group for this team. He's one of the assistant captains. So I think he's going to be someone that Hockey Canada trusts a lot. I think he's going to play a lot of minutes. He's going to play power play. He's going to play on the penalty kill. He's going to go up against the best players in other teams. And I think we're going to see a really good tournament out of him. I think he's one of the better defensemen in this tournament. And like with Doc, they're not going to have to rely on him too much if they don't think they need to. It's like someone like Moritz Seider at Germany last year, like he was all they had. He had to do everything for them. And you could see at a certain point it started to wear him down a little bit. You're not going to see that with Byram because he's got there's a lot of other options on the Canadian blue line. So I think he's going to be like Doc in a great opportunity to really, really play the best hockey that we've seen out of him to this point in his career.
And sticking with that, like the Canadian blue line for me is the key for their success. I think we can all agree that they're going to score a lot of goals. You look at the talent up front; they're going to score. There's nothing about that. And the reason I say for me the blue line is key is because you look at their goaltending, and you got all these first round picks up and down the lineup on up forwards and defense. And then you look at the goaltender. You're like, I don't know any of these players, like these goalies. Like, so for me, that's going to be such a key because you look at how warm, and you talk about warm legs and warmed up the rest of the goaltenders on the top teams are. Askarow's been playing. You've got both Swedish goalies have been playing. Blomqvist on Finland's been playing. Spencer Knight's been playing, but whoever the starter is for Canada has not been.
It's almost become like a running joke with the Canadian team and the World Juniors is what about the goaltending? Because you never really know, and it's been something that has really burnt them in the past. They've gone into the World Juniors with a great forward group and a great defense group, just loaded up and down with first rounders and second rounders, like you just said, only to be done in by some suspect goaltending. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. Taylor Gauthier, the older of the goaltenders on this team, I like him. I've watched him a lot in the WHL over the last few years. I've watched him internationally for Canada previously. I think he's got a lot of potential. I think he's a little bit underrated almost. He was playing on a really, really bad WHL team for the last few years, facing 30, 40 shots a night on a regular basis. But there were a lot of games where he could pull out those 40 saves, stop 42 out of 44 shots and his team loses 2-1 kind of thing because they only had 15 shots themselves. So I think he's the type of guy who it is going to be a great opportunity for him first and foremost because he still hasn't been drafted. He's gone through twice. But I'm really curious to see what he can do with an actual defensive group in front of him. I think there is potential there for Gauthier to not necessarily be like a superstar on the level of Askarov or Knight or Wallstead, because he won't be. He's not that level of goaltender. But I think he could be a pleasant surprise for Canada. And if he doesn't turn out to be quite the right fit, I'm very curious about Devin Levi, who also made the team. He was a 7th round pick last year. But Levi's interesting. He was an older birthday for the draft, so he's the same birth year as Gauthier. And he was great at the World Junior A Challenge for Canada East. He went toe-to-toe with the Russians in the gold medal game and kept a very badly outgunned Canadian team in it right into overtime. He was phenomenal. So there's a little bit of that international experience to work with. He's faced off against a lot of the guys on the Russian team, like Mikhail Medulin and Vasily Ponomurov. Like he's played these guys already internationally, so there's some familiarity there. So he could also be a bit of a dark horse. So it's nice. Canada's got they've got 3 interesting options who could all find that success that they need. But there's, like we've said, there's no guarantee that that's going to happen. Goaltending is definitely the weakest point for Canada in this tournament, especially in comparison to what else is out there. If Canada goes into a game against Russia or the US or Sweden, they might find themselves out shooting the Swedes or the Russians only to get stonewalled by a really hot goaltender and then have their own goaltending give up 2 goals on 20 shots and, lose the game 2-1. So it's going to be a big storyline to follow for sure.
Is there something that Canada is doing or the other countries are doing differently than Canada in developing goaltenders?
It's kind of a long story. Finland and Sweden, I think they gained a little bit of notoriety for how does the story go? It's been a while since I've read about it, but basically the story goes is that these countries were losing a lot internationally. They weren't able to compete with Russia or Canada or the US, mainly because they didn't have as big of a player pool to choose from for forwards and skaters. So they said, okay, we're going to focus our national development programs much, much more intensely on goaltending to try to make up that difference, because a hot goaltender can still win teams games against better opponents. So that's something that we saw out of some of these other countries that I think they did that ahead of Canada and I think the United States as well. So that's been a nice advantage for them. In the US now with the national team development program, that's a huge advantage as well. I mean, you Spencer Knight, he plays internationally for the States, but he's also with the same staff and trainers and specialists, throughout his regular season. So, well, at least he was before he went to the NCAA. So that's a huge advantage. Whereas Canada, with someone like Gauthier, for an example, he's been with Hockey Canada before. He's seen the staff, he's worked with their goaltending coaches. But through most of the regular season, he's back with his WHL team and working with their goaltending coach. So there's a little bit less of that consistency. So I as far as I know, Hockey Canada has put more emphasis on the development of the goaltenders in their program over the last few years, especially after learning what other countries were doing. But I don't know exactly where they are in that process and whether what they're doing is equivalent now to what we're seeing in other countries. We haven't seen that necessarily in the results yet, like we've been saying with this year's goaltending crop. I mean, all due respect to Gauthier and Levi and Dylan Garand, they're all good prospects, but none of them are that real superstar goaltender like we're seeing pop up in other countries. And there are some younger goaltenders coming up now with Canada. Sebastian Casa in the WHL is interesting. I believe his name is Benjamin Goudreau out of the OHL is really highly touted. I haven't had a chance to watch him, but I know people that really like him. So there might be some hope on the horizon, but I think we're still a few years away from seeing how much Hockey Canada has changed things and whether it's enough to catch up to the other countries when it comes to net minding.
To be fair, but Canada did just come off of a pretty good run of goaltenders a few years back with Carter Hart and Mikey DiPietro, who are both very, very high. Well, Carter Hart's already showing what he can do in the NHL, and DiPietro is still a very highly thought of prospect in the Canucks system.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and I don't want to say that Canada can't develop good goaltenders at all over the last few years, because there have been some really good examples of that happening. It's just been the consistency of it. Yeah, for every year you get a Carter Hart, the next year you've got someone who's just not quite up to snuff, and the results are dramatically different. Whereas with other countries like Sweden and Finland, you're seeing a lot more consistency with the quality of their goaltending, and I think that's the big difference right now. Is that consistent pipeline of goaltending.
Before Heidi, did you have a question?
My question was kind of going to go a little bit off the topic of players, so I don't know if you guys wanted to ask any more.
I had two questions that I wanted to delve into quickly here. Is the idea with the goaltend, like we're seeing the Flames this week, the goaltending department that is sort of developing the NHL, could that be something that Canada does? Is there a way that would work, that you're seeing sort of like maybe a top or a higher end prospect could develop it, like that Hockey Canada has an eye of, could do some sort of, is there a goaltending department? Is there a way for that to work in junior hockey?
Sorry, how do you mean? Could you
goaltending department? So that the Flames announced that Jordan Sigalet is sort of the higher above everything, and then you have the other goaltending coaches throughout the organization. Is that something that could work in junior hockey?
It's possible. It's hard with an organization like Hockey Canada, because they're trying to help aid the development of a lot of players who might be good enough to make their national team for the big events, and they might not be. So it's spread pretty thin. It's a lot easier for an NHL team to have your NHL goalie coach and then your AHL goalie coach, and then you've got in some cases a roving goalie coach who, handles your 3 or 4 goaltending prospects out there. I suppose there's not really a reason why Hockey Canada couldn't do something like that, but it would be a little bit tricky, I think.
I mean, they are losing their goaltending coach to the Flames.
That's fair.
Yeah, that doesn't help.
Yeah. My last one I wanted to get into in terms of players is I don't expect that we are going to see him, but where is Dustin Wolf right now in terms of his development?
I mean, Wolf's an interesting case. I really like Dustin Wolf. I'm rooting for him. I really am. I know it's harder for the smaller goaltenders to make it, just because they don't naturally take up as much net, but it is possible. Guys like UC Saros. He's about the same size as Dustin Wolf. He might be the starter in Nashville this year. It's possible for guys to do it. It's tough because Wolf's in a bad spot. You can't play for Everett in the WHL right now. I don't think we're going to see a lot of him in this tournament. Maybe one game as like a backup, but it's definitely going to be at the Spencer Knight show for the United States. They know him well. He's won with them before. He's been a big success for them. And I think he's just a better overall goaltender right now. So we're not going to see a lot of Wolf at this tournament, but I hope the WHL can come back soon, because he's going to be very good for Everett once he comes back. They just have a knack for developing goaltenders there, with Carter Hart a few years ago and now with Wolf. I think he's probably going to be the best goaltender in the WHL when the league comes back. And I hope that he can continue doing what he's doing, because from what I've heard, I haven't had a chance to meet him, but I've heard he's a really great kid, really thoughtful, really upbeat. And he's definitely talented between the pipes, has a really advanced understanding of the goaltending position and how to play it as a guy his size. So he's fun to watch, and I hope things work out for him moving forward.
Yeah, it's speaking of another guy who could possibly fall into that playing up on the big club until you know what the situation with the WHL looks like. I wouldn't be surprised if he's potentially a taxi squad guy. Just again, you just control his development more than just having him off on his own.
At the very least, keep him around for training camp.
Oh yeah,
because I'm a little bit rough on the Flames contract situation, but they still have a bit of a logjam. I know they had like Parsons and Nick Schneider and I believe Zagadulin all in the minors last year. Are they still a little bit? Is there still a lot of competition there?
They've got Zagadulin, Domingue, Parsons, all still signed along with Wolf.
Okay.
Yeah, so they don't have Sniper anymore.
Yeah, so it might be a little tricky to get Wolf on that taxi squad, at least depending on how much how the Flames still feel about the other guys in there. Maybe they think it's better for someone like maybe Parsons. They're going to give him one last shot. Keep him around, see if he can do anything. But it's hard to say. But I mean, yeah, it's there is that challenge too, right? Wolf is younger. He hasn't played as much as someone like Parsons has. So he needs to be playing for the best for his development long term. So maybe keeping him up with the Flames is the right thing.
Yeah. All right. My question was more. I wanted to know, like, what is watching the World Juniors look like for you? Or do you have to sit and watch with like a notebook, and are you like taking notes as you watch games, or do you try to actually enjoy it as a fan, or how does that look?
In normal years and normal pre-pandemic years, it's usually a mix. I've got friends that like the event, so there are times where we'll go out to a bar or a restaurant and watch the game, or at someone's house, on the couch, over a few beers. So that's something that's definitely been done in the past. But at the same time, I still have to work with these events, so the notebook comes out quite a lot as well. It's nice, actually. Sometimes I'll watch the game with friends and then go back the next day and rewatch it. One thing that video scouts will tell you is that there's a lot of pausing and a lot of rewinding, because you always want to get the fine detail of everything that's going on, especially if there's multiple players on the ice that you want to watch all at the same time. So you really have to be careful there and make sure you're very thorough. But yeah, I think this year there's going to be less social watching of the World Juniors. It's kind of the law. I'm not really going to be able to enjoy watching this event anywhere but home. So it's going to be pretty thorough with the note taking this year, that's for sure. But it's good. There's a lot of interesting players that are draft eligible. for the 2021 draft that are going to be taking part here. Some who could be playing really big roles, like Jesper Wallstedt could be the starting goaltender for Sweden and see the brunt of their games. So there'll be a lot of work to do from the scouting perspective.
Yeah, with that in mind, I'm going to go back to players. Who are you? Who do you think outside of Canada is going to be a breakout star? Whether it is with the draft eligible players or even ones that have already been drafted.
That's a good question. I might need to pull up. I've got some rosters on my computer here to see if anyone I can really think of that would pop up. Because there's always a lot of guys that are going to be interesting. So Anton Lundell, I don't know if he could necessarily be called a breakout since he's such a high pick and he's played internationally for Finland a lot. I think he's going to be great this tournament, and I think Finland's going to need him to be great this tournament. They don't have as good of a roster as we've seen in years past. There's not quite as much talent for them. So I think Lundell is going to play a lot of minutes. I think we're going to see some really big stuff out of the Swedish blue line. Bjorn Fott was mentioned earlier. Philip Broberg, I think he's got a bit of a chip on his shoulder too, with that high draft placement. Victor Soderstrom is really good. I could see him having a good tournament. Someone I'm really interested to watch actually is Noel Gunler on Sweden. A player with a lot of natural talent. He's got size. He's got speed. His skating is a work in progress, but he can have those bursts of acceleration with his long strides. He's a great shot. Really, really dangerous scorer, but he hasn't played a lot over the last couple of years. It's been hard for him to earn ice time for the organization he was playing for. He just changed this season, but ice time's been hard for him to come by. So I think he could be an interesting breakout candidate because he's going to be playing a big role for the Swedes this year, especially with some of their top guys not being eligible. And he's going to get a chance to play a lot of ice time. And I think there might be a chance for him to prove himself a little bit. And I think that could be something that we see. So, yeah, I would definitely say he's one of the ones to watch. For the States, they've got a lot of guys that we've seen work together as a team. They don't have Hughes, but, guys like Turcotte and Zegras and Drew Hellison and Henry Thrun. Like, these guys are all together on that one magical national team program they had 2 years ago. So I don't know if we're going to see anyone necessarily jump out as like a superstar because they play really, really well as a team. Actually, there's someone on the States that I'll mention. Matthew Beniers is really interesting. He's been great this year for Michigan in the NCAA. He's a guy who's got a lot of interesting ability as a two-way forward. He's almost like a Bo Horvat kind of guy where he's not necessarily like the most skilled player, but he just does so many things well that he leaves a really positive impact. He's going to be one of the big draft eligibles to watch this year. And the fact that he hasn't been drafted yet, I'm sure he knows this is going to be a good opportunity for him to showcase himself with, honestly, all of the scouts in the hockey world watching this. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what he can do. I think he could be primed for a really big event.
What about Marco Rossi?
Like Lindell, Rossi's going to have a lot on his hands. It's going to be a tough spot for him. I mean, I think he's going to be entrusted to play a ton of ice time, but I mean, he can do it. He's a bit of a workout freak and a fitness freak. He's, from what I've heard, he's really dedicated, hyper competitive, just loves the game and loves to compete and loves to win. So it's going to be interesting to see what he can do. I think we'll see a lot of really good stuff out of him in this tournament. I don't think we're going to see a lot out of the Austrian team because there's not a lot of support around him. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot out of Rossi because he's just that type of guy that even if his team's down 5-0, I think we're still going to see him pushing the play and trying to do some exciting stuff with the puck, which he's capable of doing. So I think he'll be a fun one to watch at the very least. I think he's going to really prove himself, especially with, like we talked about, a potential roster spot on the line. He was an older prospect for last year's draft. He doesn't have anything to prove really in the OHL anymore. He's playing in Switzerland right now, I believe. So he's got a little bit of momentum coming into the tournament. So yeah, he'll be worth watching. I don't know if it'll be enough to keep Austria out of the relegation rounds, but he'll be a fun one for sure.
And kind of who's the dark horse of this tournament? Who's the team that can create chaos?
It's tough this year. I think we're going to see a big three of Canada, the US, and Russia, just based off what they have, the talents on their rosters, the balance on their rosters. Canada's not as balanced as the other two because of the goaltending, but they've just got so much firepower. And Sweden, as I mentioned earlier, they've got some talent still, but I think missing those key players hurts their depth. So I don't know if we're necessarily going to see any like upstart teams. I don't think the Swiss have a particularly good group. Finland is a little bit lackluster. I'm not a big fan of the Czech group this year, or Slovakia. But if I had to say one surprise, I think Russia is going to be stronger than people realize. I mean, they're usually good, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if they're a team that can push for the gold medal or just really give teams trouble in the qualifying rounds as well.
You guys have anything else to ask? Or
No.
Quickly, Derek, tell us kind of what you're doing and what to expect from you coming up here.
A lot of video scouting from me, honestly. Just trying to watch what I can. We had a lot of hockey in Finland and Sweden and Russia over the past few months, so I've been watching a lot of that since we haven't had WHL or AJHL hockey here where I live in Calgary. So I'm pretty active on Twitter, pretty active with what I'm doing. I'm the new, as of this season, the head video scout and crossover scout for future considerations. So I'm trying to help tie together all the different regions. We've got great guys that cover the WHL and the OHL and all the individual regions, but I think it's important to try and pull that all together a little bit and to have someone who's seen the top guys from each region and kind of help figure out how we should rank them all. So I'm doing a lot of that. Lately, I've been going through the big Swedish names. I watched Carson Lambos in Finland as my first foray into Finland. He's a guy out of Manitoba who plays for the Winnipeg Ice. He's a top prospect this year. He's been playing in the under-20 league in Finland just to keep his legs warm. So I'll probably be delving into the Finnish leagues in the next little bit. So if you follow me on Twitter, you can probably expect to see a lot of tweets from me about 17-year-old Finnish prospects you haven't heard before.
Well, Derek, thanks so much for taking the time. I know you're very busy and it's been a heck of a 2020, and all the best to you going forward.
Thanks, guys. Thank you for having me. It was a great chat.
Yeah,
great.
Thanks, Derek.
Thanks, Derek.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
So that was Derek Neumeier, and wow, this has been fun. And what's that? Yeah, I'm learning. Even this is the first time we've had two separate guests, I think.
Yeah, and instead somebody who we haven't had on before, and somebody who's a little bit different, not somebody who's like necessarily like a hockey writer or or like works for a team or anything. Just somebody who's just a giant nerd about hockey and about prospects and all that stuff. And I know you guys said you guys have had Derek on before, but it's been
a while.
I think it was before I even joined the podcast. So
it was 2019. It was the first half. It was just before the 2019 draft.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's been.
We've had him on a couple times, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I since I've lived here in this house in Burnaby, we have not had him on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So. Yeah. So it's always it's nice, and it was nice to come back and hopefully kind of loop myself back into hockey. Just as some people know, it's depending on what like field you work in work or just in general. It's just been a little bit crazy, and sometimes on the weekend and on the evenings, you're so tired that you just don't want to. Your brain just doesn't really care about a sport that's not really going on right now.
But hopefully, in a month's time, we'll have hockey to talk about.
Yeah,
and it's hockey to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, with the juniors and all of this, hopefully, it kind of turned out. Can I just give myself a pat in the back here? I was the guy with the idea to have like the junior tournament start and then the NHL go in. I was the first guy to talk that, and now all of these experts are like, "Wow, this is great." I was the first to bring it up.
Yes, the very first person to have that idea.
Yes, I was actually. It was me. Thank you. Just quick. I guess the only quick thing I really wanted to bring up very quickly is Henrik Lundqvist. I think that's the other big news of the week. Henrik Lundqvist opting out due to a heart condition. First of all, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer without question. One of the best to ever play the game. And I think for me, I just hope. I hope this isn't the last we see of King Henrik. I hope we can get another year. Especially, just thinking about the content that you have King Henrik and Alex Ovechkin on the same team.
Mhm.
The content
would have been amazing, and I'm sure it's disappointing to the Capitals fans and anyone who's a fan of them. But like heart conditions are scary, especially with athletes and stuff. And it's like and plus with the whole COVID situation too, like it kind of puts them more at a high risk. And it's like I'd rather him to be kind of morbid, and I'm sorry about this, but I'd rather him just take a break off and then possibly have to retire than for him to honestly drop dead on the ice one day while in the middle of a game. So
yeah.
It is what it is, because that happens, unfortunately. So I wish him the best, and I hope he can come back and maybe play out another year next year. I can't remember how old he is now. He's getting up there.
Yeah, he's getting up there. But yeah, you said it right there, Heidi. We've seen a couple incidents, even just this past year with Jay Bouwmeester, where he had a heart issue that had him passing out on the bench, and it's scary when you see that. So when you have to take these things seriously, and Henrik did, and I'm really happy that he's made that decision, because it's we want him around as much as possible. So he's definitely one of the I honestly think it sounds odd. I think he's one of the most underrated characters.
Yeah, I agree.
People love looking at him because he is definitely handsome.
Yep,
one of the best goaltenders to ever to play the game, especially in the past 20 years. But I think he's got some underrated character to him, and he's definitely going to be missed. And to even transition that into the plans, like back into the sort of the hockey talk, is now what does Washington do now? Because the plan was for him to tandem with Ilya Samsonov for this season. Are they going to go in and have to take a splash at some other American goaltenders, because that's all that seems to be left? We've got all these older American goaltenders that are still haven't signed, from Corey Schneider to Craig Anderson to Jimmy Howard to Ryan Miller. So it's gonna be. I think one of those names are gonna be snapped up and see what they can do as a backup or a tandem with Ilya Samsonov, because you do not want to ruin Samsonov's development by running him into the ground this season.
No, I think, you will definitely want to have an experienced guy. Even a James Reimer could be a guy too that they look at. So it's quite that'll be quite fascinating as well. And the other thing that I was thinking about is Heidi brought up Jay Bouwmeester. I'm wondering if we do see Hamonic not signed. I don't know if we see a Hamonic or Bouwmeester this year. I wonder if they take this season off and kind of determine where they're at.
Hamonic's an interesting one, because like that wasn't his personal health, that was his child. That'll be interesting to say. I think Hamonic does like playing, but I think he'll be precautious with and kind of like wanting to know what the rules are with quarantine and all that stuff. That's a really tough one, because like I know he loves playing the game, and he loves being a Flame, I think. So that'll be
well, he's got to sign a contract too, and I know there was talk in this past week that the Canucks were interested, or at least the scuttlebutt was that Travis Green's pushing for another veteran defenseman to come in, and Hamonic would really fit what the role that Travis would want to fill really well, being a basically a Chris Tanev light type defenseman, maybe a little more physical than Tanev, but that defensive defenseman, especially if you're going to want to try and give Ole Levy some time, and you're going to want him paired with a very steady veteran presence. So it's
and I was even just mentioning too, like, even if it's not with the Flames, if it is someone like the Canucks, it's it's I still don't think he's going to be 100% for sure coming back, but I can see him, as long as he feels like the right precautions are in place and stuff with him, with what's going on with his daughter Charlie and stuff. It'll be interesting to see. But I wish I just like Hamonic as a person. So he does so much stuff in the community and stuff. So whether he stays in Calgary or goes to Vancouver or anywhere like that, he'll be missed if he doesn't play. And
to me, he's one of those guys who's going to be potentially with the Canadian division once that gets solidified. I think that actually helps him make that decision for playing, because you're not going to 30 other cities, going cross border, cross continent as much, going down into the state hot spots in the States and everything like that. You're just going to another six other Canadian cities where we here in Calgary we may have some issues. In Toronto there may be some issues, but they're not nearly in the same level as the hot spots down in the States, in New York and Florida and all that. So I do think that an all Canadian division actually improves the chances that Hamonic does definitely want to come back and play. And he'd be a great addition for the Canucks. He'd be a great addition to the Flames' current blue line. And as Heidi said, he's a great person in the community, and he's someone who is well grounded and understands the bigger picture of everything, and someone that would be a real addition to not only on the ice but off the ice in the locker room for these younger players.
Yeah, I think any of these teams, any of these Canadian teams would be happy to have him. So it'd be great. And he doesn't have to start the season. He could be a guy that you pick up a little bit later on, near the end of January, early February, depending on where you're at. And, because starts are going to be important. How you start is going to be important, but how you finish is going to be more important too. So that will be interesting as well. But I think we have hit a record at 2 hours and 2 minutes. So we're leaving here. Thanks to Tom and Derek for coming on. Is it Tom or Tim?
Tom.
Okay, good. Woo! Oh my god.
It's not Muckamadulin, so you just have to make sure.
Can we compliment Derek on how well he said Muckamadulin? That's standard.
It's a tough one until you actually hear it. You just stare at it and go, I have no idea.
Yeah, I'm like, what the? Yeah.
But it's especially for the commentators during play-by-play, you're gonna trying to say that long of a name.
Oh, good God! I'm already trying to picture that in my future. Muckamadulin, yeah.
So
I'm going to probably Muckamadulin that up a lot. But how do we follow everyone?
I am BeardyConnect03 on Twitter.
And I'm at Heidi Baseballs on Twitter.
Devin is GordHowe09 when he posts pictures of his dog and other things.
And arguing about Thomas Chabot because that's still stuck in his craw.
It's still stuck in his craw. I think he is like still angry about it even as we speak. Schneid's out driving around, SCHNEIDZ. And our favorite Mittens Nation, Noble Nation, TNOBLE. I think we're back Wednesday, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we will be starting our World Junior recaps next week. So Canada's first game against Germany is on the 26th. So we'll be doing that. And we will talk to you all very soon. Heidi, good to have you back.
Thank you.
And we will, as I said, we'll talk to you all very soon. Bye for now.